Tonight, RyanAir. It's the airline we love to hate.
It's absolutely rock bottom, as far as I'm concerned.
But not so much we want to stop using it.
There's no way I'll be able to afford to go and see all the places I have without the special offers that RyanAir have had on.
We size up a company whose pilots pay for their own water and whose flight attendants are judged by the number of sandwiches they sell you. And we discover what it's like to be on the receiving end of a man who flies the hardest bargain of all.
If you want to agree to an unedited interview, happy to answer any questions you have. It's quite straightforward.
But this conversation we're having now
Will be cut to suit the panorama agenda.
This month, RyanAir went one step further in stripping air travel down to the basics, doing away with its check-in desks, forcing you to do it online instead and pay for the privilege. It's a big moment for a company and its chief executive, who sometimes stretches customer loyalty to breaking point and who famously will only do business on his terms. With competitors copying their methods and expansion across the Atlantic on the cards, what does the future hold for the airline we know and love, or hate?
Stansted Airport, RyanAir's UK hub. August, and for lots of families, it was to be a summer holiday to remember.
This is the scene that holidaymakers faced as they started their trips here on Saturday, and 700 of them didn't make it past the first hurdle at the check-in.
RyanAir, famous for offering cheap flights, had found another way of cutting costs. No separate desks for individual flights, no need for them. The Byrne family joined the queue.
We'd already checked in online, so we were just expecting to deposit our bags. And of course, we were flying to Portugal for a week. We had probably, between us, we had about eight or nine bags.
Not enough bag drop desks, not enough RyanAir staff. Result, holiday hell and bad news for RyanAir.
They were handling 10 flights every hour, I think, at least. With that many people converging on just 4 overwhelmed handlers, it was never going to work. We were reaching desperation levels because we thought we're not going to be able to get this flight.
They didn't. The Byrnes stayed at a hotel overnight and flew by a different airline the next morning to an airport 700 kilometers away from their intended destination, and finally got there by hire car instead. RyanAir have reimbursed the Byrnes and apologized, blaming a shortage of agency staff for the chaos. They said they were working to make sure that the situation didn't recur. The Byrne family think it could.
By eliminating the costs, they are also eliminating certain services that customers demand.
in your case, like getting on the flight at all.
That's a simple thing to ask, and we're never permitted boarding.
He says he'll never fly RyanAir again. More people said that about RyanAir than any other airline in a BBC survey. And Which magazine's readers rated them 33rd out of 42 airlines for customer satisfaction. But come on now, all airlines have bad air days.
The desks are closed. That's incredible.
Remember BA and Terminal 5? Have RyanAir, the pushiest airline in Europe, pushed too hard to cut costs? Or is radical RyanAir still showing the rest the way to fly? Even if they don't always endear themselves to customers.
I don't think they go out of their way to make enemies. They just go out of their way to be as most efficient carrier as they possibly can be.
So for RyanAir, it's not about being loved?
No, it's not. And I'm not sure why any business should be.
And it's a business which has grown and grown. RyanAir started with one plane in 1985 and now has 200, flying to nearly 150 destinations in 26 different countries. By the number of scheduled international passengers, it's now the biggest airline in the world, carrying nearly 70 million customers a year.
It's been the great success story of European aviation over the last 15 years.
And RyanAir's success depends on one man.
love recessions. Recessions are much more fun. Good times are a pain in the bum. Good times, any idiot can make money.
Ryanair's boss is Michael O'Leary, not your typical CEO.
Michael O'Leary is a mighty man.
Obnoxious, that's the one word I think of when I think of that man.
He should be running the country. If he was running the country, we wouldn't be in the mess we're in.
Ryanair. You either love them or you hate them. They say customer service isn't about waiting on you hand and foot. They don't. They say it's about getting you there cheaply and on time. And Ryanair's so well known for the way they do business, they've spawned a whole industry of people taking the Michael out of them. The airline whose fares are famously cheap, but everyone knows that the quoted ticket price may not be quite the end of the story.
Well, hello, Michael. How's the crack? What you after? A pint of lager, certainly. 49 pence. Yes, I know that appears cheap. The glass is going to cost you £2. Will you be wanting a head on it, Michael?
But let's get one thing cleared up straight away. Ryanair insists they have no hidden charges. OK, they haven't. So they won't mind our drawing your attention to some of them. Let's start our journey at the website. You have to. They charge you £5 per person per flight for online check-in. You're using your computer, your electricity, your printer paper, and your ink, but you're paying them a commission? Next non-hidden charge, if you forget to print out your boarding card and bring it with you, they'll charge you £40 per person per flight at the airport for printing it out for you. For a family of 4, that's £160 more. And then you have to pay for your flight with your credit or debit card. And guess what? Now you have to pay to pay. It's called a payment handling fee. It's another £5 per passenger per flight.
What do Ryanair get charged to process that payment?
If it's a credit card transaction, they will be charged between 1 and 2.5%. If it's a debit card, they would be charged a flat fee, which is normally a matter of pence, certainly nowhere near £5.
But as Ryanair point out, you have a choice. You don't have to accept their terms, and you can avoid that non-hidden handling charge of £5 per person per flight if your debit card is on the Visa Electron system. Take a look at yours. Thought so. 92% of debit cards issued in the UK are not Visa Electron. And Visa Electron credit cards aren't issued here. All the extras net Ryanair £500 million a year, a jump of 73% in 3 years. And we found that their website's design presented some potential pitfalls, which if you weren't very careful could end up costing you money too.
If there are things going wrong here, is that just an accident? Or if it isn't an accident, who's benefiting?
I would be very, very surprised to see a design feature on this website that could be deemed poor design that would not be of benefit to Ryanair.
Example, travel insurance.
When it comes to travel insurance, the first question I'd expect to be asked is, do you want travel insurance? Do you want us to supply you with travel insurance? To which I would expect to answer yes or no.
But there's no box for that.
There's no box for that. But for some reason that seems inexplicable, no travel insurance is sitting here between Latvia and Lithuania. So all in all, it's a pretty confusing drop-down menu. I believe it is misleading because it's not explaining to you what questions you have to answer.
The risk of poor design like this is that you could end up buying something you hadn't meant to. We told Ryanair and they replied that the travelling public have no difficulty with our website usability. Maybe, but we filmed that 3 weeks ago, and now that page of their website has been redesigned, so you do get a box to choose whether you want travel insurance or not. Setting things out very clearly is key to Ryanair's reputation.
What people are saying today are that, well, they think that Ryanair broke its promises, that yes, it's still cheap, but they didn't expect to be, I suppose you might call it, fined for not doing precisely what Ryanair suggested they might do.
Gary Davis knows a thing or two about consumer branding, and he says Ryanair should watch out.
People start to, I think, feel cheated if they're asked to pay a premium for carrying on a bag that they'd forgotten to check in online. And it's that element of feeling cheated that reduces trust and that starts to then erode trust in the whole business proposition.
RyanAir say this year's fares will be 20% lower on average than last year's. But to achieve that, and they make no bones about it, they've kept on ramping up the costs of some of their extras. The payment handling fee has almost trebled since 2006, and the charge for baggage in the hold is just about to go up from £20 to £30 for the first bag and from £40 to £70 for the second. But even so, RyanAir's fares remain mostly cheaper than their rivals. Once air travel was for the few, now it's for the many, a revolution which RyanAir's taken to new levels.
I love RyanAir, basically. I've tried to go to a country every single month. Started off in January, went to Poland, went to Krakow. In February I went to Sweden, I went to see Stockholm. That cost me about £20. May I went to Pisa in Italy. After that I went to Brussels in Belgium. There's no way I'd be able to afford to go and see all the places I have without the special offers that RyanAir have had on.
But how can RyanAir afford to sell tickets not just cheap, but sometimes at bargain basement prices, and still make a profit of hundreds of millions of euros? Here's our helpful holiday video to show how RyanAir drive down costs remorselessly at every stage.
Stockholm Vaskras, that's us. We're about to experience for ourselves the money-saving magic of RyanAir.
Fresh airport air with RyanAir. It's so bracing. RyanAir don't use those covered walkways that connect to the plane if they can possibly avoid it. They don't want to pay the rent, and it can slow things down. RyanAir planes arrive and turn round ready for takeoff in record time, 25 minutes. Their planes work harder than the opposition's.
RyanAir's first flight goes out typically from an airport at 6:30 in the morning. Their last flight comes back at often around midnight, and therefore, you know, the aircraft's maximising its time in the air.
So they're sweating the assets?
Absolutely.
And it's the same on the plane.
Seats don't recline. There's no seat bag pocket in the seat in front of you, and the emergency instructions are simply pinned on the seat. Everything saves weight, saves money. Economy class ticket, economy class plane.
And the food and drink on board are nice little earners. 20% of RyanAir's revenues come from so-called ancillaries. Sandwich, £4.50. Yes, £4.50. Coffee, ready for this? £2.70. The toilets are about the only thing on board that you can use for free. And Adair is still talking about charging for them. RyanAir's cabin crew work partly on commission. A crew member, but not on that flight, talked to us in contravention of the company's rules about the pressure on them to sell.
The main concern is their sales, and by the end of the day, if we don't reach the target, we have to have a meeting with them and explain what happened. Why didn't we reach the target? In the end, it's our fault.
He's been working for RyanAir for over a year, but they still haven't taken him on the staff. He's hired through an agency, just like around a half of RyanAir's cabin crew.
So you're going to have to try harder?
Yes. That's what they tell us every time we have a meeting, that you haven't reached your targets yet, so we're not going to be able to give you a contract.
He paid €2,000 to train. No other UK or Irish airline does that. RyanAir say they want appropriately qualified staff.
We are numbers. We are money factories for them.
You have arrived on yet another on-time flight. Last year, over 90% of RyanAir flights landed on time, beating every other European airline.
They do have an enviable punctuality and safety record. We were 20 minutes early, which was lucky because Stockholm Västerås Airport is actually 110 kilometers away from Stockholm.
The nice thing about flying Ryanair, it's a sort of bonus really, is you don't just have the pleasure of flying with them, but then you have the pleasure of the journey from the place they take you to the place you actually want to get to.
But they choose those faraway airports for good reason. Because they have little traffic, their charges are cheap. And because they're uncongested, it's easier to turn round planes really fast. And the new business Ryanair brings can transform an airport and gives the airline huge bargaining power.
Ryanair play off different airports and say, well, we actually have a number of potential new bases that we'd like to operate from. You will have to give us the best deal in terms of effectively bidding for our aircraft to be based at your airport.
And Ryanair aren't afraid to pick up sticks and take their business away again if they don't get the deal they want to stay. In Sweden, we went to meet the boss of Malmö Airport. They hugely benefited by Ryanair's arrival and knew what they stood to lose when it came to their renegotiation in 2007.
We are talking about this amount of 250,000 passengers, which is valuable for, I would say, almost any airport.
And Ryanair wanted a special deal because that's how Ryanair do business.
I wouldn't call it a special deal, but everyone is requesting different kind of discounts, and we were not prepared to approach that level of discount. We just offered them a deal, and they said no to that deal.
Ryanair didn't compromise. They didn't even blink. They just took off. Much the same thing happened recently to Manchester.
Ryanair will scrap 9 of its 10 routes from the city because the airport won't lower its charges.
Manchester Airport's managing director, Andrew Cornish, actually went a little further. Ryanair made us an offer we could refuse, he said. We're not prepared to prostitute ourselves to have the market trashed. Airports, planes, cabin crew, even its own pilots, Ryanair extracts maximum value from them all.
BBC want to know why Ryanair can sell our seats so cheaply. Right. And I say it's because the pilots work for nothing.
In fact, they pay them well and promote them young, but they expect their money's worth. We went to meet a Ryanair captain, once again talking to us without the boss's permission.
The company does not respect or give dignity towards its pilots, its cabin crew, or any of its service partners.
In the morning, the company allows pilots 45 minutes before takeoff to prepare and file all their flight plans for the day. They may have 6 flights ahead of them.
There's no other airline I know that will plan 6 flights in 45 minutes. And in many airports, you still have to actually pass through security as well and go through all the security checks. It's a very, very limited amount of time, and you cannot do it in 45 minutes.
Complete rubbish, say Ryanair. It can easily be done in 15.
Generally, we're there an hour to an hour and 15 minutes before.
Oh, I see. So what you mean is you're doing it in your own time?
Yes, yes.
But that means you're helping to pay for Ryanair to run its brilliantly low-cost operation.
You could look at it like that, yes.
In one respect, his experience as a Ryanair captain is very much like ours as passengers.
No food or drink is provided for Ryanair pilots by the company. Water itself used to be provided in Ryanair. We used to all receive 6 2-litre bottles of water on board the aircraft, 1 for each crew member, 1 spare. That no longer happens.
Why?
Because the culture of the company is there to drive down costs no matter what the impact is to the employee or to the passenger.
To keep their staff costs down, around half their pilots are hired indirectly through agencies. Ryanair don't recognise trade unions.
Give me a word association for O'Leary.
A bully.
Ryanair say that's his opinion. Their employees enjoy full legal rights and they're creating up to 1,000 new jobs each year. The pilot has no complaint about the planes he flies. Ryanair have one of the youngest fleets in the business, and surprise, surprise, they got their Boeing 737s at a very good price.
I wouldn't even tell my priest what discount we got off a Boeing aircraft. Some things will be forever secret.
But if we don't know how low the price was, we know how Ryanair got it down. Spin back to 2002, the year after 9/11, a perfect buyer's market, with other airlines cancelling or delaying orders. Boeing had supplied Ryanair before and badly wanted their business again. But so did the competition, Airbus. Airbus got very close to a deal with Ryanair. So close they thought they'd beaten Boeing. They were wrong. At a major presentation in London last month, I asked Airbus about the Ryanair negotiation.
It is the case, isn't it, that Ryanair took you right up to the wire in 2002, but still he went to Boeing after that. Is it hard to do business with Michael O'Leary and Ryanair?
Well, that would appear to be the case, but time heals all wounds, and the fact is that he's talking about buying Airbus aircraft now, but we're not in any negotiation with him at the present time.
It was strictly business, Ryanair say, and they never got acceptable terms from Airbus. So, Michael O'Leary plays hardball. And talking to us afterwards, John Leahy played hardball back.
The price he wants for airplanes, I'm not willing to match. So I don't see that it takes, we actually put an awful lot of effort in that until he comes up with more realistic pricing expectations for Airbus airplanes. They are better airplanes, you know, and they demand a premium in the market. Michael has to realize that if he wants to do business with us.
He doesn't pay premiums, does he?
Doesn't seem to be the case.
It's as if the word ruthless is written right through Ryanair like a stick of seaside rock. And we were to learn for ourselves just what it can be like to be at the sharp end of a Michael O'Leary negotiation.
The Ryanair annual general meeting's taking place inside that Dublin hotel. We wouldn't have missed it for the world. But unfortunately, though we asked to come, they said we couldn't.
Then Ryanair told us that Michael O'Leary would give us an interview afterwards, but on one condition only, that we ran every word he said uncut. We refused, but promised to be fair. And then, like a force of nature, he was upon us.
Good afternoon, folks. Leave your panorama.
It's a pleasure to meet you.
Why is it you want to bring us to an unedited interview? It's very surprising if the BBC is interested in free speech.
Because
you want to agree to an unedited interview.
If it was a live program, of course it would be unedited.
No, but it's a recorded program. Yeah, as long as you don't edit it. But all you want to do now is ask the questions and then cut the answers. Sorry. If you want to agree to an unedited interview, happy to answer any questions you have. It's quite straightforward.
But this conversation we're having now
will be cut to suit the panorama agenda.
Well, judge for yourself, but it felt like the Ryanair agenda from where I was standing. Michael O'Leary was courteous to a fault, but determined to stay in charge.
Also, buy shares in Ryanair, Europe's largest, lowest fares airline. Sadly, this will all be cut out of the Panorama programme, because Panorama have an agenda that, despite the fact that Ryanair being the lowest fared airline in Europe, despite the fact that Ryanair being Britain's favourite airline, this year carrying 3 times the number of passengers of British Airways, that doesn't suit the BBC agenda. Honestly,
and his point was that he didn't want to be manipulated by us. You had to admire the guy.
Outspoken. I wonder why they call you outspoken.
They don't call me outspoken. They call me beloved, caring, sensitive, shy and retiring.
I'd become the guest on the Michael O'Leary show, and he'd shown me how he does business and gets what he wants.
He's built a character in our minds that we expect him to be rude, we expect him to be objectionable, but we also expect him to be rude and objectionable with airport authorities and with his competitors. And we'll forgive him if he's rude to us as one of his passengers, as long as he gives us a cheap price.
And it's worked a treat. To get its cheap prices, Ryanair's customers simply have to travel on their terms. The more flexible you are, the lower the price. Imagine the ultimate Ryanair customer, ready to fly at any time to any destination without any awkward baggage. We've met him.
We're going to miss our flight, so we're running.
His name's Alex Reed. He's 16 and plane crazy.
That was our flight calling for us.
Taking full advantage of Ryanair's special offers, he goes on away days with his mates from his local airport, Leeds Bradford, to Dublin.
The most I paid is £5 return, which is £2.50 each way, and usually I pay about 2p, which is the least you can pay for the flight, so it's very cheap.
You're not having me on?
2p.
Not airport taxes on top?
Nope, nothing.
No extras?
No, we don't check in any bags. I pay with the Visa Electron, because my banks give me a Visa Electron, and if I don't buy any drinks or anything on the plane, it's 2p, so It's all really cheap.
Alex has just started at aviation college, and his dream is to be an airline pilot.
I hardly dare ask you at this point which airline you'd like to fly for.
Well, clearly, I'd love to fly with Ryanair, definitely. But yeah, it's my big dream.
But most Ryanair passengers aren't like Alex, footloose and fancy-free, able to pounce on the latest 2p offer and take off at short notice. Many are used to other airlines, but they've been lured to Ryanair by its low fares. And then they want it both ways. O'Leary's prices with the in-flight service they used to get.
If they started adding bells and whistles to that and it involved our then having to pay a higher price to travel, then the brand is dead.
Because cheap, 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 that's what Ryanair is.
That's what an advertising man will describe as brand essence. That's the heart of the organisation.
O'Leary still has huge ambitions. He's built low-cost Ryanair in Europe, and next, Ryanair already owns 30% of Aer Lingus, and it's tried to take it over twice. He's talked about starting a new operation to fly transatlantic, but this time it wouldn't just be cheap.
There'd be a business class and an economy class. And the economy class would be very cheap. I mean, we said 10 euros across the Atlantic, but the business class would be very expensive.
The new operation wouldn't be called Ryanair, but Gary Davis says O'Leary could still be heading into trouble.
How do you have a group of people that are marketing, that are managing the meanest, leanest operation in the market, and then all of a sudden you're trying to pander to the needs or the perceived needs of the business customer that wants a slightly different experience?
There'd be a real risk in not being able to stick to their very, very simple winning proposition.
I think you put your finger right on it. There'll be a temptation to trade up, and once you've taken that temptation, once you've taken that pill, then heaven help you.
Ryanair has helped to Ryanize a whole industry. Only last month, British Airways announced that their customers will soon have to pay to book their seats more than 24 hours before they fly. Virgin are now charging for second bags. Many Ryanair customers have precious little loyalty to the brand. They're guided unsentimentally by the bottom line, just like the airline itself. They can always fly away. Let Michael O'Leary have the last word, as if I could stop him.
We would like to ask you about the secret of the success of Ryanair, and we would like to ask you...
There is no secret to the success of Ryanair. It comes from offering the lowest fares in Europe and providing the best customer service. That's why 67 million people this year will fly with us.
And I'd like to ask you...
Far more people than will watch Panorama, as you know, or indeed the BBC.
Vivian White flies Ryanair, and you can see the full, uncut and uncensored Michael O'Leary interview, or should I call it in-flight announcement, on our website, in which he actually says he's a fan of ours, bbc.co.uk/panorama.
Next week, caught on camera.
Oh!
The ugly reality of race hate and antisocial behaviour in Britain today.
Bang out. What?
Richard Bacon discusses the issues raised by tonight's Panorama on BBC Radio 5 Live from 10:30 tonight. Take a leap into the wild next on BBC One. Prepare to be amazed by a spellbinding new series. Life is full of surprises, and that cheetah's about to show you a TV first.